Hello everyone, my name is Preston Dennett, and today I'd like to talk to you about an area of UFO research that I think is not getting enough attention. And these are cases in which people are taken on board a UFO and into the control room and told how the UFO flies. In some cases they are actually put in the control seat and fly the craft themselves. They are told what type of energy powers these craft, and in a few cases are actually given instructions on how to build a UFO engine. That's right. They are actually given the instructions on how to build a free energy motor. So this is really nothing new. Reverse engineering has been going on for a very long time. We've got a number of whistleblower cases coming from places like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, Area 51 in Nevada, Edwards Air Force Base in California. But the problem is this information, this technology is not being released. So it's my theory that ETs are doing what amounts to a grassroots movement and releasing this information, trying to the general public, because there are just so many cases, and that's what I want to talk about right now. There's a really great case from researcher Jacques Vallée, which took place in the summer of 1968. A woman by the name of Helen was driving between Lompoc and Los Angeles in California with her three friends, an area of lots of UFO activity, when they experienced an abduction off of the highway. They were pulled inside of a UFO. She described seeing a figure dressed in a white suit who took her to the control room and basically explained how the craft works. Helen came away from this experience obsessed with the idea of building a motor, and as Jacques Vallée says, it has become the central point for her and the goal of her entire life. And I have to tell you, she's not alone. I mean, consider what happened to Whitley Strieber. In his book, Communion, he describes an experience at age 13 in 1958 when he told his friend that the spacemen had given him instructions on how to build an anti-gravity motor. He doesn't remember that conversation. His friend told him that, but he does remember trying to build the machine. He says he had harvested a number of electromagnets from old motors and put together this little device where they would rotate, plugged it in, and suddenly it started whirring and buzzing, and all the electricity in the house began to drain. All the light bulbs faded down to just a tiny little filament, and the device suddenly exploded in a shower of sparks and destroyed itself. Several of the light bulbs in the house exploded at that time, and that was it. Except for the very next day, that wing of the house mysteriously burned down. Now that may not be a coincidence, because Strieber talks about another case that's somewhat similar, but even more dramatic, involving a farmer who was also an abductee, who found himself with these instructions on how to build an anti-gravity motor. So he did. It again involved counter-rotating magnets. He put them together with very precise instructions regarding distance and size of magnets and this sort of thing, and put it in his barn, turned it on. At that point, all the metal objects in his barn came flying up towards the device and destroyed it. He was actually hit in the head by an automobile engine and knocked out, and the next day the entire barn burned down. So yeah, a lot of cases like this. I did a research looking for them, and I found a lot. There was a case in 1974 involving a man who was hiking in the Australian outback, came upon a landed UFO and occupants who carefully explained to him how their UFO engine worked. He said that most of it really went over his head. It was some type of engine he had never recognized before. It had no propellants and no moving parts at all. Another case occurred in summer of 1974 to a man who was boating at the mouth of Black Creek on the St. Johns River in Florida. He saw an orb. He followed it and to the end of a channel there and came upon this very low UFO a flying saucer, metallic. I was just a couple of feet over the water and perfectly silent. He called out to it, asked to go on board, asked for something to help all humanity if they were truly from space. He got no response, and this thing moved off. But following this incident, in the days and weeks and years that followed, he kept having repetitive dreams about building a free energy motor. And in fact, went back to college and studied physics and put together these plans, which he submitted to some people who were knowledgeable in science and found it very impressive. He's still working on it as far as I know. In my own book, Inside UFOs, I present the case of Jim Kubelbeck, who at age 21 in 1960 joined the Navy. He was a Navy electronics technician and was stationed aboard the USS Valley Forge when he had a very dramatic encounter with UFOs. He was on deck smoking a cigarette when these bright light objects showed up. He called out his crewmates, who also saw them, about a group of 10 people at least. He called the bridge and asked about these strange lights. The bridge denied seeing them, so they were apparently covering it up. The next day, none of the men who saw these UFOs even remembered it. They apparently had missing time. He finally asked everyone and found a couple of the guys who were there who did remember seeing the UFOs. But what was really interesting is Jim remembered what is apparently an onboard experience. He recalled being inside these objects, he thinks, surrounded by human-looking figures, and had a long conversation with them involving power sources on our planet. They talked about how power had evolved from the horse-drawn cart up through automobiles and propellants, and using electricity, solar power, water power, magnetism, and they explained that our only limitations are the ones that we place on ourselves. They took him into the engine room, showed him their engine, and told him he could build it himself. And years later, following this incident, as a much older man, he had retired and decided he was going to try and build one of these things, and ended up taking a bicycle tire, some magnets, some pieces from a pinball machine, and various odds and ends, and creating what amounts to a perpetual motion device. It didn't turn forever, this wheel, but he said it would turn for a number of days on just one push, and was sort of along these veins again of people being given instructions on how to find alternative sources of energy. Another great case occurred in 1956 to a gentleman by the name of Virgil E. Atkinson, who was stationed at Port Hueneme in Southern California. He was driving along the coast highway with his girlfriend when he picked up two young sailors. He was shocked how youthful they looked. They looked so much alike. They looked like brothers. They told him that they were from the Coos Head Navy facility up in Oregon. Virgil didn't know about that, but he gave the guys a ride, dropped them off, and it was only a few seconds later, moments later, he had a very dramatic close-up UFO sighting along with his girlfriend. He feels these sailors were somehow connected to it and that they were probably not sailors at all, but ETs. By coincidence, he was about a year later stationed up at Coos Bay Naval Facility, where he had a very strange experience involving an apparent abduction. He found himself on a gurney on a table. His head was put down on this weird device, which actually projected his thoughts on a screen, while these four blue-suited figures standing around him questioned him on energy sources such as the gyroscope and things like this. He came away from that experience absolutely obsessed with building an energy-free motor and ended up doing it to a certain extent. He certainly got a patent for it. It's patent number 508-8949 for an oscillation-driven vehicle that basically uses sound waves to propel itself. May sound unusual, but I'm telling you there are other cases. Another case comes from Yvonne Smith, a great UFO researcher based in Southern California. Her excellent book, Chosen, features the case of John and Jesse Leung, two brothers who have had repeated abduction experiences. John Leung had a high school education. He didn't really like school, but came away from his experiences very interested in mechanics and building an electromagnetic motor. He actually self-taught himself on physics and mechanics and started filing patents. He patented a motor using magnets, counter-rotating magnets. It's patent number 6781270. He invented something called an ellipsoid generator, which he says is a dynamo-electric device that is highly adaptable to a broad range of applications while providing robust output and energy conversion. In other words, a magnetic motor. That's patent number 6879076. He's patented other stuff. He once tried to patent a magnetic eccentric drive and was denied by the patent office and told he might actually receive an order of secrecy from the government, and that his invention might actually be declared secret and shut down. So what he did is he divided the invention into two pieces and patented them separately. So yeah, there's a lot of cases. I could go on and on. There's the case of Stan Romanek, which, controversy aside, he has received some very complex equations that appear to be connected to interstellar travel. Charles Hall, another controversial case. He's become a physicist himself and has invented what he believes is a new photon theory that challenges Maxwell's four equations describing electromagnetic fields. I know another case. In July 1991, Melinda Leslie, a very well-known speaker in this field, someone who's had abductions and is now a prominent researcher, she had an abduction in July 1991 with two friends while driving along the Los Angeles Crest Highway through the LA National Forest. And what happened is one of them, while they were on board, was given instructions on how to build a device. And it turned out to be a UFO detector using, guess what, magnets. So yeah, they're apparently all about magnetics. There's, of course, we don't want to forget about George Van Tassel's Integratron, which never got finished, but is the same type of thing. Someone who's been given instructions on how to build something that will help humanity. Of course, let's not forget about Nikola Tesla. That's the ultimate case. This is a guy who's transformed the world with his inventions and transformed our understanding and use of electricity. And he himself said he was in contact with ETs. So this is a common thing. In my most recent book, Onboard UFO Encounters, I present 15 cases of people who were taken on board, and 6 of the witnesses were taken to the control room and either instructed on how the craft flies or actually flew the craft themselves. Pat was given a demonstration flying from LA to New York and back again and was told that they're not actually flying, they're expanding and contracting space. They told Pat or Ann how to read their control panel. Ramon, Joe, and Dolly actually sat in the control seat and operated the craft. They explained to Tim how they operate their craft, and he came away from his experiences with a very strong interest and understanding of physics. So yeah, there's nearly a dozen cases for you. I did a really in-depth study into them and wrote about it in my book, Not From Here, Volume 3. I present these cases in Chapter 10. It's called If You Build It. And yeah, people, I think, are building these things all across the country and the world, for that matter. I do know of other cases. As far as I know, no one's built a successful alien engine, but I think it's only a matter of time, and hopefully soon. So once again, thank you for listening and keep having fun.